Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah here. We're continuing in Hilchas Pesach. We're holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Dal, Chelik Hey. We're on Samach Aleph Amid Beis in Siman Tuf Samach Aleph, and we are beginning today with Sif Hey. So in Sif Hey here, the Mechaber addresses a case that to us is going to seem downright strange, difficult to understand how this would even happen. But says the Mechaber, Im afu chametz im matzah. Let's say you baked chametz together with your matzah. So it's before Pesach, and let's remember, we're talking about a time, let's say, where people didn't have commercial matzah bakeries. They were baking their own matzah. Maybe, it was some kind of strange situation, like there was some kind of communicable disease spreading around, and people couldn't get their matzahs from their regular bakeries. And they found themselves in a position where they had to put on masks and gloves and go outside to their backyard and bake matzahs using social distancing. So somebody has an oven that he used for chametz, and somehow maybe his wife put in the challah for Shabbos, and he put in matzah. And now we're baking matzah and chametz in the same oven. So imafu chametz in matzah. If you baked chametz together with the matzah, loy nesra. The chametz is not, the matzah is not aser, ela imke naga b'chametz, unless the matzah actually came into physical contact with the chametz. And if it did so, if the matzah actually touched the chametz inside the oven, then noitel mi makayim shenaga kedei netilas makayim, you would have to remove from the matzah what we call kedei netila. You have to remove a piece which is the size of the width of the top joint of the thumb. I believe, if I remember my biology correctly, I think this is called the distal joint. I hope I'm right. I think it's called the distal joint. It's the first joint over there on the thumb, that width. So you have to remove from the matzah kedei netila a piece that size, v'hashar mutter, and the rest of that piece of matzah would be mutter. Let's take a look in the Mishnah Berurah over here. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Im afu afilu taicha Pesach. Even if you did this on Pesach, so somehow on Pesach in this oven you baked chametz together with matzah. Chametz im matzah. Chaf beis, says the Chavetz Chaim, betaner echad. You did this in one oven, and says the Chavetz Chaim, afilu. This would be true even. Betanor katan, in a small oven, v'sasum, and a closed oven. The machmirina la'el b'simen tuf mem zayin Seif Sif Aleph, way back in Siman Tuf Mem Zayin, we spoke about a case where somebody made matzah in a small closed oven together with, let's say, meat. Let's say a meat dish that was roasting in the oven that had chametz tikka ingredients in it. And we said over there that if you're talking about a taner cotton v'sasam, if you're talking about a small, well-sealed oven, so it really holds all of the reach and all of the tam is really held and trapped inside the oven, we said that there are those opinions that are machmir in that case and would say that the matzah would have to be disposed of, and it would be aser. But Bakan, over here, where we're discussing a case where we're talking about matzah and chametz. So we're talking about bread. We're talking about Pesach tikka bread and chametz tikka bread. Pesach tikka bread, i.e. matzah, and chametz tikka bread, shari. In this case, even though they're baking in the same oven, shari, it would be mutter. The reich pas heter bepas iser ein nechshav leklum. Let's remember that in a halachic standpoint, the concern over here is what's called reicha. Now, literally, reach means smell. What we're talking about is the reach of the chametz. Does that permeate the matzah? And when we're talking about two bread items, when we're talking about chametz tikka bread and Pesach tikka bread, we don't say that the reich of the chametz tikka bread, halachically, that's called a davar kachush. It's talking about something that has weak tam. It's not something that has a very powerful reach. And so too the matzah. And we don't say that the reach of those two items are going to combine to create a situation of iser. Ein nechshav leklum. Over there, back in Siman Tuf Mem Zayin, we were speaking about a case where you had matzah in the oven, and then you had, let's say, a roast, and let's say you had a beautiful veal roast in the oven with a chametz stick of stuffing. So over there, that's something that has fat. It's fatty, and it has a very potent, powerful reicha, and that's something that would permeate the matzah, and it would aser the matzah. But when we're talking about bread, we're talking about challah and chametz. Over there, it's talking about something that's kusha. It's weak, and over there, we don't say that there's a transference of tam. Ve'eskimo ha'achrayim, and the achrayim agree lahater bazeh afilo hayod nilushim b'shemen rishuman. The achrayim say even weiter. They say, let's say one of these doughs would have been kneaded with some fat. So now you do have a fatty substance. Still in all, we still say that reach is kachush, and it doesn't permeate the matzah. We do not have a problem. When we come makam, nevertheless, we do have to realize that there is a potential issue here. The spot in the oven where the chametz is sitting, you made a loaf of rye bread in the oven, so that spot where the rye bread was sitting in the oven, if you want to use the oven later for Pesach Tikka foods, that part of the oven that the rye bread was sitting on is going to have to be kasher. But the rest of the oven, you won't even have to kasher. Because when we're talking about something that's kachush, a reach kachush and a tam kachush, like bread, and there's no roitiv, there's no liquid intermediary, there's no gravy, there's no sauce. So over there, we don't say that the tam of the rye bread permeates the rest of the oven. Where the rye bread was sitting in the oven, over there, that piece of the oven floor, or if it was stuck on the wall of the oven, that section of the wall is going to need hesek. You're going to have to burn it out, but the rest of it won't be a problem. Now, it really is obvious from the other halacha that we said over here that that's the case. Because if it was true that the tam of the bread, of the chametz stick of bread, permeates the entire oven, then if you had a matzah sitting in the oven, even if it doesn't come into contact with the rye bread, l'chera, the matzah would be aser because the tam of the rye bread permeates the entire oven, and then even the area that the matzah is sitting on in the oven would be permeated with chametz stick tam, and it would go into the matzah, and the matzah would be a problem. And we're saying over here that the matzah is not a problem unless it comes into physical contact with the bread. And even if it does come into physical contact, we only have to take off kedei netila where it actually made contact. But we don't worry about the matzah's contact with the oven. Ice cut nechav gimel. So like we just mentioned, the Mechaber did say that the matzah is not aser unless it comes into physical contact with the bread. Naga b'chametz, ice cut nechav gimel, hainu bataner kishehem chamen. If the matzah comes into contact with the bread in the oven while it's hot, so then you're going to have to remove a kedei netila from the matzah. Kedei netila smakayim is cut nechav dalet. What is the size of kedei netila? Hainu ka'avi roichav etzba agudal beinani. That is the thickness of the width of that joint and the thumb, which I believe is called the distal joint. And it goes not necessarily by your own, it goes by a beinani, by the average size of that joint. There are those shitas in the Sharitzian over here in Eis B'Am Aleph. He brings down the Chagak of Del Yerabel Ched Moshe that are machmir in this case, and they say that if this happened on Pesach, if on Pesach you had chametz and matzah together in the oven and they came into physical contact one with the other, then les or kuloi, then these shitas would answer the entire matzah. The Gra says by a matzah kvula, a matzah that has a fold in it, that you could be makel, and the same thing would be over here, that we would be makel, and we wouldn't answer it. And it's brought down, the reason for the chumrah is not so much a difference in halacha. It's not that there's a halachic argument to be machmir, as much as it's an inyan of chumrah de pischa. We're so machmir on inyane chametz that these shitas say that there's a room over here for a chumrah as well. And if this happened, we should throw out the entire matzah. To us, this seems so completely strange to even imagine such a case. We're so machmer in everything that we do, and over here we're talking about a case where you have chametz and matzah together in the same oven, and we're saying that you could use the matzah and just remove a kedei netila. Okay, says the Ramah, Haga, matzah sheniskapla batanur. If you have a matzah that was folded, right? What we call all the time kfulos. We have a matzah that got a fold in it. So if you have a matzah that got folded in the oven, udevuka, and in that fold of the matzah, it is attached, ad she'ein sholet sham ha'esh, so that the heat of the flame, the fire, cannot get it into the fold. So we're not talking about a matzah that's folded. Let's say I have over here a piece of paper. Let's say it's folded like this. So you can see it's open in the fold. So yeah, the matzah is not flat. Yeah, it's folded, but it's open, and the heat has no problem. It's exposed to the temperature of the oven, even inside. That's not a problem. What we're talking about is where it's like this. It's folded and it's rolled down. See that? It's pressed flat. So now the inside of the fold is not exposed to the heat of the oven. So says the Mishnah Berurah over here. I'm sorry, the Ramah said udevuka. Matzah sheniskapla batanur udevuka, and it's rolled down and flattened and attached. Ad she'ein sholet shama eish, so that the heat of the fire cannot permeate, cannot get inside the fold. Oisrin oisa toicha Pesach. If this happens on Pesach, we would aser the matzah. Aval shor matzah shebetanur mutarim. But the rest of the matzahs in the oven would be mutter. So again, what's the Ramah saying here? The Ramah is addressing a case where you had a matzah kfula in the oven on Pesach. Remember, we've spoken many times already about this concept that in times past, they would bake matzah on Pesach. So you're baking matzah on Pesach, and you have a matzah kfula inside the oven. And we're saying that if the heat cannot get inside the fold, we have a chash chametz on that matzah. So for that, the Ramah says, Oyser and Oysa, we would aser that matzah. Well, if we're asering that matzah, what's the status of the rest of the matzahs in the oven? Do those have a problem? So that the Ramah says, no. Avol shar matzah shebetanu mutarim. The rest of the matzahs in the oven are mutter. And this really follows very simply from the halacha we said before. We said before, if you have chametz mamish in the oven, you have a challah in the oven, you have a rye bread in the oven, and you have a matzah in the oven, we said that the matzah isn't aser unless it touched it. But if it didn't touch it, it's not aser. So over here, certainly we're talking about matzah. We're not talking about rye bread. It's a matzah kfula. So we have a shash of chametz, but it's not going to aser the rest of the matzahs that are in the oven. Says the Mishnah Berurah over here in Ois Katan Chav Hey, Udevuka. The Ramah spoke about a matzah sheniskapla, a matzah that got folded udevuka, and it's attached. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Avo be'ena devuka mamish ein lesser. But if it's not flattened out, if it's not closed, the fold and touching, then you won't aser it because the heat could get in. Right? He brings this down. The Shartzian over here, Mem Gimel says, "Hainu afilohim smuchim kol kacha shekamat nidbak akefel lahadodi." Even if it's mamish closed down, or close to being mamish closed down, kevan she'in nidbak mamish. As long as it's not really, really closed, as long as the heat could work its way in, the Magen Avram says we wouldn't daser it. Nevertheless, im loy karmu panel de lamata b'makam akefel. If the underside of the fold is not karmu panav, va'afilu yesh loy safek bazeh, even if there's a doubt whether or not it's karmu panav, aser, then we would say that it's aser. So basically, I think what he's saying over here is, he's saying that the Ramah that says that the kfula is a problem is when the kfula is closed so that the heat cannot get inside the fold. But if it's opened, it's not a problem. But what he's saying now is, if you look inside the fold, right? Let's say it's open, But if you look inside here in the fold and you see it's not karmu paneh, if you see it's not crusty inside the fold, well, then we have more of a shash chametz because it really looks like it's not baked in there. And therefore he says, I'm like karmu paneh de lamata. I think when he says the underside is not karmu paneh, he means inside the fold. I feel safik bazeh aser. Ice cut chavav. If you have a kfula and it's devuka, it's closed. Ad she'ein shailit shama eish. It's closed to the extent where the heat cannot get in. Ritzayna loymar. What the Rama wants to say here is the kevan shenidbak. Since the folds are attached, it's closed. Ve'ena eish yachal lishloit sham bekayach lefais miyad. So that the heat of the flame cannot penetrate inside the fold to quickly and immediately bake the matzah when the matzah goes in the oven. We have to worry that while the matzah is sitting in the oven over there and the heat cannot get in, it's going to become chametz. I see I made a note here to look at the Dirshu footnote 57. Let me see what that is. Oh, yeah, I just wanted to mention over here, they do bring down from the Chayk Yaakov that this halacha, this din of the matzah kfula, the Chayk Yaakov says, Einay el chumra. It's really a chumra. It's really a real stringency. Ve'ein lai makar b'shas. There is no source for this in Shas. In the Gemara in Psachim, we don't have a place where it talks about asering a matzah kfula. U'betam adavar Berurah Chazanish, Chazanish says the reason it's only a chumrah is because what are you worried about? You're worried that you're putting this matzah in the oven and the heat is not going to get into the folded spot. Well, you're right. It's not going to get into the fold immediately to bake it immediately. But certainly the inside of that fold, if you take one of our thin matzahs and you put it into one of our 1,000-degree ovens, so certainly within mere moments, the inside of that fold is going to be at least the temperature of yatzer lettuce. Yatzer lettuce is what? 130, 140, I think. We're talking about a 1,000-degree oven. In mere seconds, the inside of that fold is going to be more than yatzer lettuce. And once it reaches the temperature of yatzer lettuce, the dough can't become chametz anymore. The chimetz process is halted. So the Chazanish says, what are we really worried about? Ubeprat b'matzah shalanu, certainly by our matzahs, shehein dakois, we make these thin matzahs. V'hataner chama'id, and we have extremely hot ovens. V'chol achshash shemehechmetz makam hakef el kaidem afiyasai einay al pi yasai the halacha el minig lahachmir. So the Chazanish says that this is not really a halachic concern, it's a major chumrah, but it's a chumrah that we're noyeg. And I can tell you that Rav Moshe Zecher Tzaddik V'Kadosh L'Vracha was very makbid on the kfulas, and we're very makbid on the kfulas when we check the matzah. So we're going to speak about that soon. But so it's a chumrah, but it's a chumrah that we're noyeg. Okay. Ois Katan Chav Zayin. The Ramah said if we have this matzah kfula that's closed, oisrin oisa. Says the Chavetz Chaim Ois Katan Chav Zayin. Kula. Oisrin oisa is we're going to aser the entire matzah. So it's on Pesach, and you made a matzah kfula inside the oven. Oisrin oisa kula, we aser the entire matzah, not only the place where the fold is. On Pesach, if we made a matzah kfula, we aser the entire matzah. By us, we're baking the matzahs before Pesach. So because we're baking the matzahs before Pesach, the Ramah is going to say soon that if it happens before Pesach, you don't have to aser the whole matzah. But on Pesach, you aser the whole matzah. Now, the Mishnah Berurah gives his take on this. The Mishnah Berurah says, a new recipe. The Mishnah Berurah says, why do we aser the entire matzah? So we're in the Mishnah Berurah, Chav Zayin, right by the Ois Mem Vav of the Shari Tzion. The Kevan Shachametz Mechuber B'Matzah B'Chaticha Achas, because since the place of the kfula, the place of the fold, where we have the chash of chametz, is a one piece together with the rest of the chametz, we have to worry that the tam of the chametz permeates the entire matzah. I believe, let me see if it's brought down over here. I believe that the Chazon Ish takes great issue with this. Yeah, in Disha footnote 59, they bring down the Chazon Ish. Chazon Ish Kosav she'ein loymar she'atam she'arama oisers kalamatzu mishum sheichatich achas. He doesn't like the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah says the reason the entire matzah is usher is because since the kfula and the rest of the matzah are one piece, we have to worry that the tam of the chametz that's in the kafel, in the fold, might have permeated the entire matzah. Chazon Ish says that can't be. So he says that he holds that that's not the reason why the entire matzah is usher. So why is the entire matzah usher? So the Chazon Ish says, "Ein tam harama ela minig shenagu lahachmer." Again, it's a minig of chumrah. That's what the Chazon Ish says. We're learning the Mishnah Berurah here, and the Mishnah Berurah's words are the kevet chachametz b'chomer. And I'm looking at a picture of the Chavetz Chaim over here in my study. You can't see it; it's on my wall. The Chavetz Chaim. I like to keep that picture of the Chavetz Chaim, the famous one that went around, the one that came out recently from the Knessia Gedolah. And I like to be able, when I'm preparing Mishnah Berurah, saying Sharon Mishnah Berurah, I like to be able to look up at the Chavetz Chaim and realize whose words I'm saying. So the Chavetz Chaim says that the time of the Ramah, why the entire matzah is aser, kevan shachametz b'chuber mamatzah b'chaticha achas, since it's one piece, choshishin shema nespashe tam hachametz b'chol hamatzah. V'afal pi sheyesh b'matzah shishim negdoi, even though the rest of the matzah is shishim keneged the kafel, ein mispatel b'soicha shechametz b'pesach b'mashu. We can't be mavatel the kafel to the rest of the matzah, even though there's shishim, because we're talking about on Pesach, and on Pesach it's not batel. Chametz is also b'mashu. Ois chavches toich haPesach. This Ramah so far has been talking about a matzah that you baked with a kvula on Pesach. Not like us, we do it before Pesach. Here we're talking about on Pesach. Ritzoyna Loimar, says the Chavetz Chaim, what the Ramah wants to say here is im ha'afiyah hayatoich haPesach. This whole din is when the baking was done on Pesach. Da'az dinoi b'mashu, because then we're talking about a situation where chametz is also b'mashu. However, even on Pesach, if you were baking 6 matzahs in the oven at the same time, and one of them had a kafel, the other matzahs are okay. Says the Chavetz Chaim, afilu im noigim v'noishchim zu b'zu. Even if they're touching each other, that's noigim. Noishchim literally means they're biting each other. What that means is noigim zebazeh means that they just came into physical contact with each other. Noishim zebazeh, that they're biting each other, means that they're pressed together so firmly that if you would try to separate them, a piece would rip off from the other one. So now it's really touching well, so that they really became almost one piece. If you try to separate them, one is going to pull dough off of the other. Even in that case, says the Chavetz Chaim says, even in that case, the Ramah says that the matzah with the kafel is not going to aser the other matzah. De'ein iser kachush yoytze mechaticha lachaticha beloy roitiv. Because again, we're talking about a tam kachush over here. We're talking about a weak tam. We're not talking about a davar charif. We're talking about bread that is very shvacha tam, very weak tam. That tam does not transfer from one piece to the next piece without a transferring agent. It needs some kind of a liquid intermediary or a fatty intermediary to cause a transference of tam. We don't have that here. V'rak tzarich lizayer sheyaniach ma'at min haheter im ha'isser b'mkayim hanagia k'dei netila. However, Chavetz Chaim does point out that just like we said earlier when we were speaking about the piece of matzah with the rye bread, that if they come to contact with each other, you have to take off k'dei netila. So too over here, if the kafel, says the Chavetz Chaim, if the matzah kfula comes into contact with another matzah in the oven on Pesach, you're going to have to remove a k'dei netila from the other matzah. Ois katan lamid mutarim. The Ramah said the other matzahs in the oven are permissible, mutarim. Says the Chavetz Chaim, afilu im nagu ba bimkayim hakefel. So the Ramah said the other matzahs are okay. even if they came into contact with each other. Now the Chavetz Chaim says, understand what that means. That means not only in a case where matzah number one that has the kefil in it, this is the matzah. So the kefil is over here. Let's say you touched another matzah over here. The kefil isn't over here, so the chash chimutz is really over here. Says the Chavetz Chaim, even if this matzah touched this matzah at the point where the kfula is, still it doesn't answer the other matzah, only kedei netila. You only have to remove kedei netila. But there's a caveat. Let's say the one of the matzahs over here had some kind of fat in it. Even if the one that's a mutter was the one, let's say it had oil on it. You smeared oil of some kind of fatty substance on the surface of the matzah, then that's a transfer agent. Then im nagabim kaima kefel kuloi aser. In that case, if the mutter, if the matzah of heter, the matzah without the kfula, had some oil on it or something, then if it touched the matzah kfula at the point where the kfula is, then the entire matzah is going to be aser. The entire matzah without the kfula is going to be aser, because we're going to say that the shuman, the fat, the oil that's in that matzah, is going to cause the tam that came out of the kafel, out of the folded spot where it touched it. It's going to permeate the entire matzah. The azal heter, because the matzah of heter that has the fat on it, umefatem lo iser, it's going to imbue the prohibited matzah, the kfula, with fattiness. And now it's as if the kafel matzah, the matzah of iser, is also fatty. And now the tam is going to transfer out the other matzah. But if the matzah of heter touches the matzah of iser, not where the kfula is, it touches a different point of the matzah, then sagi lo b'chtei netila, then it's enough to remove a kedei netila. If the matzah that has the kfula is the one that has fat, then it answers the entire other matzah. Okay, now we're going to go a little further in the Ramah. In my Mishnah Berurah, I'm up to the last word on Samach Aleph Amud Beis. Now the Ramah is going to address really our case, where we bake the matzahs before Pesach. The Kodim Pesach, if you bake a matzah with a kfula on it before Pesach, ein le'asar rak makom dibuka. Then the only part of the matzah that's aser is where the fold is, and he's calling it not makom kefula, makom dibuka, because we said the kfula is a problem only when it's closed, not when it's open. So he's calling it the makom dibuka, the place where it's closed. So you bake your matzahs before Pesach, and you take a matzah out of the oven, and you see there's a kafel over there, you could break out the kfula. The rest of the matzah is okay. We're going to see that you have to break off a little bit more than the kfula itself, but the rest of the matzah is going to be okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah, nice cut lamed aleph on the bottom of Samach Aleph Amud Beis. The kodim Pesach, before Pesach, hainu afilu benimtza toicha Pesach, even if you find the kfula on Pesach. So you baked matzahs in Shvat, and you brought your matzahs home and you put them up on top of the Svarim shrine. And now you took the matzahs out on Pesach. You open up your box of matzahs and you find a matzah with a kfula. It doesn't answer the entire matzah. You have to break off the makom of the kfula, the place where the fold is, and a little bit more. But the rest of the matzah is okay because it was baked before Pesach. Oiskat lamed beis, rak makom dibuka, only the place where the actual fold is aser. Usevivai kedei netila. And surrounding it, kedei netila. You have to remove kedei netila. V'hashar mutter, the rest is mutter. After lesbu shishim neged makam akefel, even if you don't have 60 keneged the place of the fold. Im nimtza bebeisa masa kfula nefucha lachar Pesach. Let's say after Pesach you find a kfula or a nefucha. Nefucha is a halacha that we're going to deal with tomorrow. But you find a matzah after Pesach that has a kfula or a nefucha, which is a chash chametz. Ein la'achmir. You don't have to be machmir and say, oh, maybe it was chametz avar lava Pesach, because these are all chumras. The opinion of the Chavetz Chaim is that when you're working in the matzah bakery, if you look in the oven and you see a matzah kfula in the oven, you should try to take it out with a different tool. If it's practicable to do that. Now, I want to call attention to the Dirshu, to footnote number 67. Very interesting footnote that has very practical applications for us. Says over here in the footnote, as far as checking your matzahs before Pesach, to make sure that you don't have kfulas, you should check the matzahs before Pesach, and you should remove any kfulais, any folded matzahs or matzahs that have bubbles in them. So you shouldn't have to burn it if you find it on Pesach, which is really a very powerful chumrah to say that you should have to burn it. And also so that you shouldn't come to eat it. You should have a Talmid Chacham checking your matzahs to make sure that your matzahs don't have kfulas and nefuchais. He says that he has a lot of anguish that they ask shilas about anything. People ask shilas about the most mundane things, but on matzahs kfulas and nefuchais, they don't ask and they don't look and they don't check. And he says, Staman Amoritz doesn't know what a kfula is and what a nefuch is. The Iyashacheli, if I was able to, he says if it would be up to him, he would make sure that nobody could get a box of matzahs that wasn't checked by a Talmid Chacham. The Chazon Ish would check the matzahs many days before Pesach to remove any kfulas and nefuchais. V'loy b'leil b'dikas chametz. V'agayin Rishon Zaman Arbach kasav sheyesh la'ayin madua in boitkim leisay b'leil b'dikas chametz al kol panim b'yoyim keneged achaloyin ay b'chutz and kosher l'boitkim la'aner. So all of these gedalim say that it's very important to check your matzahs before Pesach, even preferably for kfulais and nefuchais. No, in most matzah bakeries they have somebody, a Rav HaMachshir or a packer who's trained and knows what he's doing, who's supposed to go through the matzahs and remove the nefuchais and kefulais. So I guess people rely on that. By me, the matzahs that I supply, we check those matzahs assiduously for any kfulas and nefuchais. We do try to do a very careful job to go through every matzah and make sure there are no kfulais and nefuchais. But certainly this is something that people have to pay attention to. Okay, so we're going to stop. We're going to stop over here. So Mir Seshev will continue tomorrow on the top of Samach Beis Amud Aleph with the halacha of the Fuchais. Thank you so much for joining me for this Torah learning. The schus of Limud Torah should be muggin, should protect Gans Klal Yisrael, those in these Yeshuas and Refuas. The Rebbe Shalom should check Yeshuas and Refuas quickly. We should be zeicha quickly to the Geula Shlema. We shouldn't only be mispal for an end to this tzara. Instead, we should be mispal for the Geula Shlema to the end of all tzaras. We should be zeicha to share together in Yerushalayim. Everybody be well.